some technical issues with this new computer, all kinds of new fun. Also, software not acting the way I would expect, which is always a lot of fun. Um, yeah, but okay, it's that time of the week again for Geek Speak. And today we're going to be talking about a very timely topic that we talked about in our roundup. It's going to be Google Analytics, how to get set up with it, and what to do going forward, especially with this new world of Google sunsetting Google Analytics Universal. And of course, my name is Phelan. I work at Seymour Digital Media, where we focus on search engine marketing.
And I'm Rina Little from Littleworks Indie Media, and we run a digital marketing company in Vancouver.
Awesome. And so I know that we were, when we were doing kind of like a bit of a preamble for this part and we were talking about the topic, it was, this is going to be a big shift for a lot of people in how they're doing tracking because Google announced that they were going to sunset Universal Analytics. And we talked about, it's a bit annoying because the new Google Analytics 4 is more app-based, and so there's some parts of it that I don't like a lot, but I understand that Google is wanting, one of the big reasons I'm guessing that they want this is it's going to be more AI friendly. So the, big part of information going into AI, it's going to be, it's labeled correctly and it has like a certain configuration to make it consistent. And so they're, Google's wanting it to have it set up for more AI in the future. But, there's lots that we can do. So I guess the first point that I think we kind of talked about briefly in our preamble was setting it up using Tag Manager is going to be super important going forward. So you used to have it where you would just put the code on the website. Now you definitely want to put Tag Manager and then put the Google Analytics 4 into that. It's just A, it's going to be easier for you, and then B, it also gives you that's kind of the system they want because it's all supposed to be a nice closed loop of using Tag Manager to launch the Google Analytics 4, and then that goes off to their data studio for reporting. And so, they want to have you all nice and neatly trapped in the Google marketing ecosystem.
So, Phelan, why don't you just do a little brief overview of what Tag Manager is for people who are familiar with analytics, but maybe not know that side of it yet?
Yeah, for sure. So the Tag Manager is a special. It's super useful for people, especially marketers who don't know code that well. That once you have it in the website, it has a little bit in the head section, a little bit in the body, and then once it's there, you can do all kinds of good stuff with like tracking. If people click on things, and you can have them deployed for like certain events, but it's a really helpful no code solution for deploying analytics tags. So whether that be Facebook Pixel, Google Analytics, I did it for Microsoft Clarity, which is like a heat mapping. You've got a ton of options that are available to you.
So basically you can set up your tags so that they collect certain segments of traffic and goals and things like that, and that sends the information into Google Analytics. Would you say that's about right for a layperson?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sorry, I was like trying to give like a nice well-rounded full definition, but yes,
I know. So you can count on me for doing that translation.
It's but that's definitely the best way to deploy the Google Analytics 4, and especially because there's a special new tag in Tag Manager that I haven't dug in too deeply, but because we don't have a stringent, but for anyone who has to concern themselves with CCPA or GDPR, so the European Data Protection, or the California version, which is the CCPA, that there is a special consent tag. So it does like so you can actually like affirmatively get someone's consent as part, and like say, I would like to be tracking you.
So basically we don't have to do that at the website level. Like I know a lot of people are using those plugins that ask for consent when you visit a site. So we're gonna be able to get rid of those plugins.
In theory, yes. I haven't dug into it super deeply.
Okay.
But there is like you have to request consent. So it's an affirmative consent saying like, it's not
So
just, I don't want to be tracked. It's saying I'm okay with you tracking me.
right. So my question is then is that um, I guess in that way we can rest assured that um, the parameters for that consent is like and what's being collected is actually going to be in compliance, because one of the things that I worry about is that all of those little plugins that somebody's made, if they're not kept up to date, which you don't always know if they're, unless you're actually looking, you don't know if they're actually collecting the right information for you, or imposing the right requirements on the plugin for you,
Yeah,
legally.
exactly. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's going to be so I think that Google also had that concern because most of like the GDPR compliance stuff and the CCPA compliance is
yeah,
mostly about how you're like putting your hands up and you're saying like, I'm not doing anything, it's Google, like cuz they're the ones collecting,
right,
processing and storing the data,
right.
and your job is to basically just say if you have any issues with it, talk to these guys, which is
So
Google. And
does that change liability then for business owners that own websites that are doing business in other parts of the world?
it so it's tough to say right now because
Oh,
like
ask my lawyer that. That's a good question.
yeah,
That's a
yeah.
good,
Most, yeah, because when I read through any of the privacy policy stuff, like with the
yeah,
Shopify plans, anything like that, most of it is just basically saying, as a business owner, you're not storing their information, which is true. You're not. You're just getting the final
right,
version. You may have
right.
an email list at most, but like you're not selling that to a third party. You're not. All you're doing is just letting Google collect, analyze, and store the data, and then you just get to benefit from whatever they analyzed. Um, and so
Right.
all the legal responsibility that goes with
Except
the
for
GDPR stuff goes to
Yeah, except for things like if you require login for comments, that kind of thing, or if you're doing a membership site or selling courses or anything that requires an email sign up, then it's a bit different, right? Then the Google is not just going to be the only solution for you.
yeah, yeah, and mostly not to get let's not too far down
No,
the privacy
I will,
rabbit hole.
I just
Yeah, because it's
will go back out after
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, just it is something you have to be careful if you do have, like you said, logins, anything
Yeah,
like that, because you're collecting first party information. So that would
yeah,
be the biggest issue I would be concerned with. But basically, a lot of it is I'm just not going to sell your data. Is a lot of
yes,
it. I'm going to store it and I'm not selling it to a third party because like no one, like some people do, but yeah, for the most part, I'm not like, ooh, I'm going to be selling who like bought my course. Like the aggregate data that I have is not going to be sufficient to really matter to anyone, and I don't really care like for selling it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, um, and so yeah, that's going to be a big part. Is affirmative consent for Google Analytics going forward. I think that more people are doing that, where it's becoming a bigger part of just being more compliant. Because, and I don't see that as being necessarily a bad thing. Um, I think people being aware of what they're being tracked for is good.
I'm not sure that they are, though, even if they have all of that. They just click yes because they want to get to the information that they're looking for. And they click yes without actually really reading any of it, anyways. So,
Yeah, fair.
you know what I mean? But on the other hand, if you're not selling the data, then that's good. Um,
Yeah.
all right, let's go back to some of the other features of the new analytics. What else did you find?
So a lot of moving over to the new Google Analytics, there's going to be a couple of spots that open up as well. Of the Google Signals is a new one. When we set up the Google Analytics, you can do Signals, which is Google's attempt to do cross-device attribution. So meaning that if someone finds you first on their phone, then goes to their desktop, that because they're logged in with the same user ID on both spots, that Google will be able to trace that along the journey. That's going to be one that's going to be more prevalent. You need to activate that. You can't just, it doesn't come out of the box. So you have to say, oh, I actually do want to be doing this special tracking. So that's going to be a really good one for people going forward. The
And what kind
other
of tracking, sorry, what kind of tracking can you do in that you can't already do in Google Analytics?
So like attribution. So you know how we always talk about the multi-channel funnel and like people are
Oh,
doing all
right.
this. So like, and now it's not only going to be source of medium, but it can also be device. So we can track people over the devices.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. So that's going to show up in things like assisted conversion and things like
Yeah.
that. Okay. All right.
And yeah, so the new one, it's not going to be assisted conversion. It shifts over to acquisition journey.
Oh,
I
really? Oh, interesting. They've
Yeah.
renamed it.
Yeah, there's like a special name for it on the new Google Analytics 4, but it definitely, when I looked into it, it's much nicer. It's going to be very useful in the future, is what I feel. That's one of the parts where I think they really spent a lot of effort, is doing the multi-channel funnel, moving it up so it's not like kind of this weird hidden thing. It's more
Yeah.
prevalent. You can see like a full journey of people using it. And again,
Well,
I this is one of the side benefits I think of people being on an app, is because you see like a stream of people using and how they use your app, and so that also
yeah.
means that your website, you'll also be able to have the same responsiveness.
That's really actually that makes total sense because if they're trying to show the benefits of Google Ads, then you would want to make that more front and center in your analytics section.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry about that. And yeah, I think that those parts are going to be much more useful for people in the long run, of being able
Right.
to, yeah, see those parts, and then also be able to, they also make it fairly easy to turn events into a conversion. So goals are going away, or have gone away, and now they're going to be replaced with a thing called conversions. Same concept. Basically, you make events into, this event matters to me. Okay, like user
Yeah.
sign up, purchase, anything related to that is going to be much more useful going forward. um, I also, the other one that came up when I was doing some research into the new platform and what they've done with it, especially out of the box, is going to be your audiences. There's going to be a
Right.
bigger emphasis on audiences and aggregating data to make it like, aspects of your user base, and that's going to be a big component, especially again, like you just mentioned, Google Ads, audiences huge, and only going to become bigger in that as we get more targeted and more refined in how people are using or finding you online.
Mhm. All right. So why don't we spend some time now talking about the best way to transfer your stuff over or get that going? I haven't even looked at it at this moment, and I have a bunch of sites that I'm going to need to move over. So where do I start?
Yeah, that's fair. So the problem is that there's no one-to-one porting over from UA Analytics to Google Analytics 4. What we've done for a couple of our clients is we just set it up, because you can set up both at the same time.
Oh, I see. Okay, that sounds good. So you can
Yeah.
actually set it up both at the same time and just wait for the other to sunset, and that's just fine.
Yeah. And
And
then
then do you get to keep the data? Like, will when Google Analytics sunsets the universal one, will we be able to keep that data? Will we have to download it, or what happens there? Like, where's the continuity going to happen?
that's
Or is
a that's a great question. They
how's
were
that going to compare? You're
yeah,
over here.
yeah, I very much feeling the same way as you. They've kind of left it up in the air. They weren't very clear about. Well, the problem is that the data that's collected in UA is not transferable to the Google Analytics 4, which is why they've had this like interim period where
Right.
they let both run.
Okay.
They don't, because just the way the data is collected, the way it's analyzed is just different. That there's
Yeah.
no like import all your data and we're just going to magically make it work. It's not going to operate that same way, which is why even if you are using Google Analytics UA until next year, I'd still right now set it up. Make sure you have Google Analytics 4 set up on your clients' websites and start learning, getting used to it, and start collecting data now, because I don't expect them to have like as much as it would be awesome if they could just import, and then it's just like, they could render like, you don't get all the data, but at least you can get like traffic by source and medium, and then at least you have some historical data to compare
Yeah.
against. That would be great. I don't expect them to do that. Google is when Google decides to stop something, they stop something, and it is like it's dead. There's I think you can Google something called Google Graveyard of all the projects that they've just killed. And
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so there's definitely when they kill a project, they kill a project. There's no surviving it.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so what you're suggesting is to just go ahead and set up the new analytics side by side to whatever we're doing already, to the analytics that we already have. Does it like, what's going to happen with Search Console? Does this get attached to Search Console at the same time, or what happens there?
So this it has its own connection points for both of them,
Okay.
and so you'll have to connect it. It's pretty user friendly, honestly, for connecting it, because they know that they want to have all these, again, going back to what we talked about at the top, of having you in their nice little ecosystem. So they are pretty friendly with all those, how they connect. The other one of the ones that I'm interested to see how they connect it is going to be the Google Optimize, which is their A/B testing tool or personalization tool, and that one has. I'm expecting it to be some pretty deep connections between the two. Again, going back to audiences, conversions, and how that relates to Google Ads. That they're going to be super friendly.
All right. So, Pip, I just letting everyone know, Pip's put a really great blog post up on how to set it up in the comments already. I just thought I'd go and
Yeah,
check to see if anyone is leaving us comments or questions while we were here, but
yeah, yeah.
that seems to, so that's good.
Yeah. There is.
Okay.
What the, I'm not liking switchboard this moment.
What about reporting in terms of like if you're using a third party reporting, like not Google reports or whatever Google calls their reports, I forgot.
Yeah,
Um, if you're using like I use Raven reports and some other things,
yeah.
how fast do you know if any of those reporting, I guess reporting if they're using the new Google yet? I guess we should probably check with them and find out.
Yeah, I would. Anyone that has your Google, like any third party tool, I'm
Yeah.
guessing that everyone's scrambling. So, another big one that's going off of what you just said, Shopify does not have a native integration with Google
Oh
Analytics
no.
4, um,
Oh no.
which
Oh
I'm not
no.
going to say that they've. Yeah, I'm not going to say that Google, because they're everything on Shopify is hosted on Google, their platform, like their version of cloud.
Yeah.
So, which is why we had Google Shopping, and it was so bad, because I'm not going to say that they were forced at gunpoint to do it, but the timing is very suspicious. So I'm a little surprised that Google Analytics 4 wasn't fully integrated into Shopify.
Yeah, that
Um,
is surprising and
yeah,
disappointing. I was just starting to see some really good benefits of working with Shopify in some ways, but for
they
in certain situations.
yeah, Shopify is definitely an organization that when they get news like that, they will pivot and everything
Yeah,
will change
yeah,
overnight, and they'll throw
yeah,
their engineering weight behind it. It's just a little surprising they got caught off guard with this, because I'm in the
yeah,
Shopify partner Slack channel and people were very
yeah.
upset with this news. But yeah, there's definitely any third party tool, like you said, Raven tool. I can't speak to them because I don't use their tool, but I know that a lot of platforms are going to be scrambling, and I'm guessing that because they have this lead in time of a year, my guess is
Mhm.
that everyone's going to pivot very quickly to in
Yeah,
taking
yeah,
in the
yeah,
new API and
yeah.
having the new connection work.
So where else are we going to have to look to integrate or things that are might stop working or what other things? So we've got reporting, we've got console. What else is in do we do? Our websites,
Yeah.
obviously, and then what else? Is there
Yeah,
anything else?
so another big one is we're gonna have to relearn how to do our event tracking. I kind of touched on it, but I think that's gonna be a big one.
All right.
Is how all those systems are talking to each other and making sure that you both go through event tracking using Google Analytics 4. And again, Tag Manager is super good for that part.
Yeah.
And I'll post a link to a website that I follow a lot for this stuff, which is Analytics Mania. The gentleman's very good for Google Analytics and Tag Manager and how the two interact, all the way from absolute beginner to the most advanced you could possibly be.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I'll post a link in the comments to his website, but it's definitely one I would watch.
Okay, so my brain is going in this direction. It's going, okay, I need to set up the new Google Analytics. That's number one. But I think what you're telling me previously is set up Tag Manager first and then the new Google Analytics, or how does that work?
Yeah,
which direction?
So I would definitely. You should have Tag Manager. It's just going to make your life easier. It's going to make your life better. Like you will be, once you get into Tag Manager, it is like night and day. Honestly, whether it be Google Ads conversion tracking, whether it's Google Analytics 4 event tracking, like all these things all become much easier if you use Tag Manager. So start there.
Yeah.
Getting it set up in Tag Manager with Google Analytics 4 is super easy. It's like one of the first tags that you can make. It's like says Google Analytics 4 configuration. You just pop in your little ID and then just say on all pages as the trigger, and then you're off to the races. I would start there.
Okay.
It's super easy to get going with that. If you have a web developer, you just ask them. But most WordPress sites allow you just need access to the head code, and then just at the body, and then you just pop in the 2 bits of code that they say.
Right.
And so,
that
would be the first place I would get started.
Okay. Great. Okay, well, I think those are all of my questions. Now, what other final thoughts do you have on this switch over?
It is in for me, it's classic Google. To be honest, is just like, oh yeah, we're going to make this big sweeping change, and everyone is now stuck scrambling. At least they gave us some lead time with it. Because otherwise I would, if they were going to do this in like, oh yeah, 2 months from now, everything's going to break, I would be mad. And I think they know that like the user base would be livid about something like this. I think that I'm going to say I'm cautiously optimistic about it, because they've even extended things like UTM parameters, which is nice. Yeah, we talked about this, and it's specific to Google Analytics 4 and new UTM parameters. Some of them are like content type. So if you're doing like, you're using a content type strategy of the skyscraper, and you can like label your content piece as like, this is my skyscraper piece. And you can actually do much more granular tracking, which is kind of exciting in a lot of ways, that they're making these UTM parameters, like extending it out. We're able to like distinguish different shopping channels and that kind of stuff. So there's some cool stuff that's in the works that I'm going to say I'm cautiously optimistic for, but there's a lot of stuff that I'm always a little nervous about these transitions, because there's going to be some growing pains, and it sucks.
Yeah, sure. For sure. There are going to be growing pains. Well, there are growing pains in digital marketing like almost every day. There's so many changes between all of the platforms. Half the time you want to poke your left eyeball out. Just when you start to get smooth on a flow, and getting your total spidey senses honed on something, it goes and blows up anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
This is an arena for the people that like the lifelong learning.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's never a dull moment. All of these platforms they're moving so quickly. Just like SEO and Google Ads, just those two are changing so much themselves. And so having a major change like this is not unexpected, but it's definitely one where your SOPs and your procedures that you're doing are going to be updated and changed. I'm not thrilled about it, but I'm, like I said, cautiously optimistic that the future is not going to be terrible.
I'm cautiously optimistic that the future is not going to be terrible. That's got to go on a plaque somewhere, man.
Yeah. You know, that's as close as a
Brilliant.
ringing endorsement you're going to get from me about this. Is like, I think it's not going to be awful. It's yeah, that's the high praise you're going to get from this part. It's well,
Uh,
there's just some components to the Google Analytics 4 that I'm some things are going away, some things are getting changed. It's there's more to it now. Google Analytics 4 than there was a year ago when they first announced it.
yeah,
Um,
for sure.
yeah, and so I think it'll all be for the best. Um, we
Yeah,
are
I'm just checking to see if we had any last questions, but we're coming up to the end, aren't we?
Yes, we are coming up to the end, and
I don't
I
see any last
have
questions.
yeah. Just double checking. Yeah. I definitely want to go and throttle Switchboard. I am not a big fan of them. They,
Yeah, I think we need to go back. I'm not loving
uh,
the switchboard, man. That's
no,
too
no.
much. Like,
Today has definitely been of technical issues with a new computer that I'm just like, I'm not a fan. I can affirmatively say that I am not a fan of this application.
yeah, switchboard's got to go. So, okay, well then, what have we got coming up next week, Phelan? Let me take a
That
look. Geek Speak.
yes. Let us take a look. Uh, let us take a gander. And I believe, uh, yeah.
Where is that document? Okay, got the document up, and it is going to be, what is our date next week?
Oh, it's
March.
myself and Greg that are going to be talking about how to
Yeah.
optimize the Google Analytics tracking.
Well,
So
that's
building off of
I think
this,
yes, yes,
uh,
which will be really interesting to see. I'll
yes,
be tuning in for that one.
yes, and I will be brushing up because that totally changed what I was going to talk about for those that that one. Um,
Yeah,
so
this does change. That's
yeah,
it. Okay, well, we look forward to next week, and thanks
yeah,
everyone for joining us today, and have a great week.
yes, indeed. Goodbye, and see you guys next week.